No bag alerts today, but we still have a lot to talk about today, folks, okay? And it's somewhat of, well, it's not really breaking news because it's already been broke and it's already been more than 24 hours to really been discussed about and all these other things. But don't care about that, okay? Don't care about that. There's going to be a light episode after I then gave you guys a banger on Monday. We're going to keep things light because there's probably going to be another episode that may come out today or maybe even tomorrow. Who knows? I don't know. Who knows? Do you know? I know. I don't know. Bryce Young gets benched. The Ravens lose another game. The Chargers are on the roll. The Justin Fields experiment continues. My thoughts on the Eagles and Falcons game. And the Cowboys got blessed with an unholy L. Yes, I'm going to talk about the Cowboys. It's always a great day, okay, when the Cowboys get decimated, okay? If you're ever having a bad day, just know if the Cowboys lose, it just makes everything a whole lot better, okay? All of this and more, okay, folks? Okay, folks, because guess what? I told you, I'm going to try to keep things very light. I'm going to try. No promises, but I'm going to try to keep things light. Just know this is going to be a very stat padded type of episode. You're going to hear a lot of stats being flown around, but just know, guess what? I'm going to guide you through the entire storm. All right. All of this and more on the 34th episode of the greatest football podcast that you can possibly listen to on a day-to-day basis, whether that means that you are cleaning up your room, cleaning out your car, washing dishes, whatever the case may be. I am the person that you want to listen to when it comes to football podcasts, okay? It's me, your GM, okay? The person who is still scouting, okay? I have been scouting for the last few months now. Things have been a little bit rocky, but it's okay because you know I already got a mock draft that's already been out. But guess what? I won't release it to the public because guess what? You guys don't need to know what I am thinking right now because we got football, okay? All of this and more. I am your host, your GM, your chief bagronomist, your chief head of the table, chief meteorologist, bagro meteorologist to be specific. But most importantly, I am just a host with the most, okay? Kale, you already know what I'm getting ready to say. So guess what? On three, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's just not wait any longer. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the National Football League. There may be even an episode that may come out for college football this week. Who knows? Stay tuned. You never know. You never know. You never know. Now, we're going to talk about the biggest news that has unraveled so far, and that is Bryce Young, former first overall pick, Carolina Panthers quarterback Bryce Young has been benched, and Andy Dalton will be starting for their next game. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this situation. It's a lot to unpack from the situation. So we're gonna try to go through everything and just go from there. So when we look at this entire situation, this was somewhat of a expected move. Okay, and it's not because of oh man, he's a bust and whatnot. Actually, you know what? Before I go any further, let me just say this to any of the people that say that Bryce is a bust or anything like that. Let's stop. Okay, this is a very sensitive moment for him. This is a very sensitive moment, for the team as well. I've seen a lot of people from Mel Kiper to Stephen A to various other people that are saying that Bryce Young is a bust and whatnot. And I've even heard people say that he's worse than Jamarcus Russell. And I'm just like, no, he's not better. He's not worse than Jamarcus Russell. This is this is this is somewhat of an episode I've been sort of waiting to put out, but I haven't had the adequate information, and I was just waiting for the right situation for it to happen. And, this is the curse of the first. Yes. Better yet, boom, that's the title of the episode right there. Curse of the first. See, this is exactly why this is the greatest football podcast in the world, okay? What people don't understand is the price of being the first overall picked is most likely you are going to be put in a crappy situation. Most likely you're going to be put in a situation where there is a lot of dysfunction. Most of the times there's going to be a lack of talent around you. And you are basically going to be pushed into the fire and basically told to turn mud into golden bricks. That's basically what it is at this point. And, I want to paint a picture with you guys, right? Imagine being a quarterback where you came from a situation where you had everything that you need to be successful. You had one of the best offensive lines in college football, one of the best receiving corps in all of college football, a really good running back, probably one of the best running backs in all of college football, a Hall of Fame coach, one of the greatest college football coaches of all time, as someone that can direct you and show you what you need to do game in and game out. Imagine having that, right? And then you go into a situation where you have nothing. You have nothing, okay? You are in a situation where literally you barely have a reliable receiver to rely on. You barely even have a tight end. You barely even have a productive running back. And that's not even going to the offensive line as well. Let alone you have a coach originally when he was first drafted that, really didn't really want to draft you, but instead wanted to draft CJ Stroud because he knew that CJ Stroud was a more NFL ready quarterback than what you were. Imagine all of this. And then finally you get benched. That's a lot to take on. That's a lot to deal with. And that is what's going on with Bryce Young right now. When we look at this, Bryce Young has, was put into a situation where his growth was going to be very limited. Let's just be honest here. You go into a situation where you don't have a lot of weapons, where you don't have a lot of, potential or any of those things. Of course, you're not going to be successful. That's for any person. Now there are some people, case in point, Tom Brady, who was like the outlier in this entire situation. But even then, he had Bill Belichick. He had Bill Belichick. He always had a really good offensive line. They always had a really good running game. He had Gronk and he had Julian Edelman. And if not them, then he had Danny Amendola or Chris Hogan, or he's had, well, you know what? Actually, no, that's probably a bad one. That definitely is a bad one. But I say all that to say this. It is hard. You can't label him a bust when he was drafted into a bad situation, right? And I remember leading up to that draft, there were people that were saying, oh, Bryce Young is definitely a really good quarterback, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I didn't see it personally. And it's not because of, his physical assets. I think it had to do more with, Alabama quarterbacks. Alabama quarterbacks historically have not been really good quarterbacks when they transition from college football to the NFL. They have not been really successful. Perfect example, Mac Jones. Mac Jones was a first round pick. Guess where he is now? He is now a backup quarterback for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Yeah. So you have that. You now have Bryce Young, who is getting benched. It's that is the price that a lot of oh man, there's so much that has to be said. It's just a nasty situation. It is. Alabama quarterbacks do not transition well, and a lot of times they have somewhat of a fall from grace type of moment, because a lot of times they are put in a situation where they have the best of the best talent on their team, and then they go into a situation where they're thinking they're going to have that same that same type of system, and they don't. And then they're barely able to flourish. They struggle, and then they either become career backups or career journeymen. That's just that's just what it is at this point. And when you look at the situation in itself and the way that the Panthers got Bryce Young, it was already a messed up situation from the beginning. Okay. Let me just tell you, before I even get into his stats, let me just tell you the trade package that was given up for the Panthers to get that first overall pick. Chicago got DJ Moore, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 1 4th-round pick. Okay, that's what they got for the first overall pick. Now let me tell you what happened with those picks that Chicago got. Those 2 first-round picks turned into Darnell Wright and Caleb Williams. Those 2 second-round picks turned into Tyreek Stevenson. Now the second round pick, that doesn't happen. That doesn't they're just now getting it with everything that hasn't transpired with Bryce Young. So that means 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a very high second-round pick come next year's draft. And then they also have Torrey Taylor, who's a punter, who's supposed to be a pretty good punter. Now, when we look at this, Caleb Williams somewhat looks pretty productive. Darnell Wright was definitely, productive, is a productive tackle as well. So they got all that. And DJ Moore, right? And DJ Moore, who was a very productive receiver, even in Carolina, he was a productive receiver. And guess what? And guess what the Panthers got? Just a pick. Just a pick. Just to say that we have the first overall pick and we can make the decision on getting Bryce Young. Now, mind you, the Panthers, for the last few years, have made some of the worst trades that you can possibly think of. They just recently traded Brian Burns to the Giants. Did they get a first-round pick for that? No, they did not. They traded away all-pro, future Hall of Fame running back, and Christian McCaffrey to the San Francisco 49ers. Did they get a first-round pick from that? No, they did not. They have been horrible with these draft picks, and, it's come back and it's come to haunt them. It has, because when we look at it, their picks, their last few picks, and their last few draft classes have been absolutely deplorable. They have been horrible picks. Horrible draft classes. Now, sure, you may have your diamonds in the roughs and whatnot, as to any team does. But the fact of the matter is they have not drafted well. They have not been able to surround Bryce Young with the adequate tools in order for him to be successful. But at the same time, to the people that say, well, Bryce Young is a bust, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. I get where you're coming from, and you may have a point. But this is what I would say. If Bryce Young was as athletic as a Kyler Murray, or he was, as strong as a Russell Wilson, when he was first playing with Seattle, he was able to roll out and run and do all those different types of things, we wouldn't have no problem. But because of the situation that he's in, and him, only being 5'10", and his arm doesn't really look that good, and he doesn't really look that athletic, he's very limited. And, the situation that he's in right now, all he has is a Deontay Johnson, who most likely is going to get traded by the trade deadline, an old Adam Thielen, who at this point should probably just retire, and Xavier Legette. That's all they have. They don't have anything else. I don't even know who their running back is. I think their running back is Chuba Hubbard. That's it. That's all they have. They don't have anything else. And so when we look at this, the Panthers are teams view the Panthers as an easy W. That's just what it is. They view them as an easy W. If a team looks at a schedule and it shows that they have to go up against the Panthers, that's going to be an easy game. That's going to be hibachi. That's going to be a game where, they can, ball out and sort of show, why they deserve to get paid a little bit more if they're looking for more money, or, whatever the case may be, right? That's just the running joke for the Panthers. And, if you're the league, you will want to keep your eye on this entire situation. But at the same time, you're going to have to step in, because this is bad. This is a really bad situation for the league because you're seeing pictures of the stadium not even really being filled, barely being filled. You are seeing more empty seats than people in seats. And from what I've heard, the ticket prices are cheap. I'm talking about dead cheap. I'm talking about the cheapest thing you could possibly think of. If you have a date and if you're trying to save money, take it to a Panthers game. Take it to a Panthers game. You could probably get some chicken strips and some large drinks and probably some nice seats and whatnot for probably less than $300. I guarantee it. You could probably look it up right now. Go on any of these sites you want to, Game Time and SeatGeek or whichever ones. That's how bad this situation is, and they're not bringing in any money. The team is not good. Their best player is out for the season in Derrick Brown. What do you have on this team to say, okay, there's some potential? None. You don't have any. And, for the head coach, David Canales, he has no ties with Bryce Young. He has no ties because he did not draft him. That's not his guy. He inherited him, yes, but that is not his guy. And so now you are starting to see a situation where most likely a transition is going to happen. A transition is going to happen, and most likely Bryce Young will probably be moved and, traded somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised. I just wouldn't. But let's get into these stats, okay? So in 2023, his stats were 315 completions out of 527 attempts, 2,877 yards, 5.5 yards per pass attempt, 59.8% completion percentage, blah, blah, blah. 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, right? Cool. Now let's look at 2024. 31 completions out of 56 attempts for 245 yards, 4.4 yards per pass attempt, 55.4% completion percentage, and 3 interceptions. You see that there is a major decline from 2023 to 2024, and it's probably even worse now. So you can see that, his confidence in himself it's shot. You can see that he is being ragdolled. He is being beaten up, and he doesn't have anybody that he can rely on. He doesn't. He just doesn't. Now there were some times where he was definitely missing, a few of his receivers that were open and whatnot, and every quarterback does that, but the fact of the matter is he is struggling significantly, and he has regressed significantly. And, this is not good. This is not good at all. But you know what? But we're going to go a little bit deeper into this situation, because this opens things up for a bigger conversation, right? So I decided to do a little bit of digging, right? So according to, I think it was a NBC Sports article that came out recently, and they basically did a poll. Well, not a poll, but they ranked the most frequent positions that are drafted first overall. Quarterback is the number one. 34 quarterbacks have been drafted first overall. 23 running backs have been drafted first overall. 16 defensive linemen have been drafted first overall. 6 offensive linemen, 5 wide receivers / tight ends, 5 linebackers, 1 defensive back have been drafted first overall. Now, let's go even a little bit more deeper into this conundrum, okay? So according to Himbo, if you don't know who Himbo is one of the producers for Get Up, and he always posts, a crazy stat that that he has, the people to guess to guess the answer. A lot of times he gets them right, a lot of times they get them wrong, but he decided to do some digging, right? And he found some data that's actually pretty crazy that could probably open up to other different conversations as well. So this data is from 20 drafts spanning from 2000 to 2019, okay? So apparently, Quarterbacks have a 46% hit rate. 46%. I want to say that again. 46%. 26 quarterbacks have hit that were drafted in the first round. 30 of them have missed. In total, 56. Do you want to know the position that has the highest hit rate? And you probably will be surprised. And it's the one position that everyone says you don't draft in the first round. Guess what it is? Center. Centers have a 92% hit rate. 11 centers have hit. Only one was a miss. I want you to think about that for a second here. But I'm not even done yet, okay? Because we're going to keep on going down, because I really wanted to do some research, because I understood that this was going to be a very highly talked about situation. So when you look at the first overall picks who made it to the Hall of Fame: Bill Dudley, Charlie Trippi, Chuck Bernard, Paul Hornick, Ron Yari, O.J. Simpson, Terry Bradshaw, Leroy Selman, Earl Campbell, John Elway, Bruce Smith, Troy Aikman, Orlando Pace, and Peyton Manning. That's a very small list that were former first overall picks that made it to the Hall of Fame, right? And even then, let's look at some current players right now that were first overall picks. Trevor Lawrence's career record right now is 20-32 according to StatMuse. Joe Burrow's career record, 29-24-1. Baker Mayfield, 44-47. Bryce Young, 2-16. Trevon Walker, 16-18. Kyler Murray, 29-37-1. Myles Garrett, 47-54-1. That is the curse of the first. That is the curse. Most of the times you're going to struggle. The times you are going to have to be the guy that tries, quote unquote, air quote, big air quotes, to try to raise the team up and to put them into a situation where they are contenders, where they are talked about, where they are popular, where players want to go there and play with you and all those different types of things. That is the price. That is the curse of the first. Now, when we look at Caleb Williams' situation, that's somewhat of an outlier, but that's only because of how they mishandled the situation with Justin Fields. They realized that they messed up, and so you know what they did? They say, you know what, guess what? We're going to do better now that we have the first overall pick. So we're going to do right. And so guess what they did? They, made a few moves in free agency, patched up a few holes here, there, everywhere, traded for Keenan Allen, got this person, got that person, got DeAndre Swift in free agency. And so now he's put in a situation where he has a receiving core, he has a productive running back, has a good offensive line, have a productive tight end in Cole Kmet, and has a good defense. That is how first overall pick quarterback is supposed to be put into. That's the situation that you want them to be in. Not in a situation where, like the Panthers, where, you don't have anything really to show for. And the players that are there, I wouldn't be surprised if they ask, to be released or to be traded fairly soon. I wouldn't be surprised, because it's just a nasty situation. It's a situation that does not make you want to go and to play. It does not. It doesn't. It's a horrible situation. It's a very messy situation, honestly speaking here. But this is the price that must be paid when you are the first overall pick. And you know what? It even makes things worse, because with this upcoming draft class next year, some of those quarterbacks, there's a chance that they might get drafted by the Panthers. And if that happens, that's even worse, because then 9 times out of 10 they really won't have anything. So it's like, do you pull somewhat of an Eli and be like, I'm not going to play for that team if they draft me? Or what? Because that is a situation. It takes you a good 5 to 6 years to like really get some motion, right? It really is. Like, okay, they overpaid for Robert Hunt. What has he really done? Other than that, what else do they have on that team? Nothing. And granted, I get it. Drafting quarterbacks are hard. It takes some time, and a lot of times when you have a great quarterback and you try to find the next great quarterback after that, it's hard. You're going to go through a phase where you're going to be missing more than hitting, right? Because ever since Cam Newton, they've had Teddy Bridgewater, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. Who else? 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 Is that it? Bryce Young, now Andy Dalton. Like they've had their own little cycle of quarterbacks. But I think this also opens up a situation where that's why you see a lot of times quarterbacks favor the Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay system a whole lot, simply because, and I know I'm talking about this for a long time, but best believe we're going to get into other things because trust and believe there's a lot to talk about. But that is why you see a lot of times a somewhat of a resurgence when quarterbacks go into the Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan system. That's why a lot of their personnel are so sought after once the offseason is over with, because they see the production, they see the change of what happens when they are put into that system. Case in point, Baker Mayfield at one point was starting to look like a bust. He was starting to look like a career journeyman, right? After he was traded from the Browns to the Panthers, he was starting to look like a bust. Then he goes to the Rams. He spent the rest of the season with the Rams, and after that, went over to the Buccaneers. They gave him a trial, and then afterwards they paid him. And so far, he's looked pretty good. Now, I'm not saying he looks like an elite quarterback, no, but he looks like a pretty good quarterback. Why? Because Sean McVay, they worked the kinks out, they fixed some things, tweaked a few things, and they put him back out, and he's good. It's somewhat to me, the Shanahan and McVay system is sort of like a rehab for quarterbacks, where if you are lacking in certain areas and whatnot, they have a way to tweak it and to help you be a better quarterback, and then put you back out, and then you're a whole lot better compared to anywhere else. That's why you see so many, I wouldn't say disciples, but so many people that are coming from those two systems. Case in point, Matt LaFleur, Clint Kubiak, Mike McDaniels. Who else? I know there's so many different people that come from that system. You would not be surprised, right? And if I'm Bryce Young, I would probably try to see if I could get traded to one of those, to somebody that comes from that tree, whether it be directly or indirectly from that tree, because that they're going to work with you, and that they're going to try to tweak the things that you're doing wrong and try to cover your Achilles heels, so to speak, compared to being put into a situation and you're not really doing the best, and then they just kick you to the curb, 2 or 3 years afterwards, right? So there's that. That's my whole spill with the whole Bryce Young situation. Now, moving on to the games that have happened, because we're still playing catch up, and I think we this episode we might be done playing catch up. I think. Let's talk about the Ravens and the Raiders. Okay, this is what I would say for all the Ravens fans out there. I feel your pain. I see your frustrations. I see all of those things, and you have every right to be upset. If you would have told me that the Ravens would be 0-2 with 2 games that they could have easily won, I would have called you a liar. I would have hysterically laughed in your face, because there is no way under God's green earth that they should have lost to the Raiders. Now, I'm not saying that the Raiders are just absolute dog water and they're boo-boo and everything. No, I'm not saying that, but come on, guys. Come on. John Harbaugh, what are we doing? You are coaching horribly right now. That offense looks like a deer in headlights. It does. This is probably the worst that I've seen from the Ravens, in the early parts of the season. And granted, I get it. The early parts of the season, everybody's still working through the kinks and whatnot. Not a lot of, players, played in the preseason and whatnot, all those different types of things. I get that. But come on. Come on. Even the stats somewhat show, well, let me just give you I'll just give you the stats, and then we'll go over everything, okay? Lamar, 21 for 34, 247 yards, one touchdown, one pick, 7.3 yards per attempt, and 81.4 passer rating. Gardner Minshew, 30 for 38, 276 yards, one touchdown, one pick, 7.3 yards per attempt, 94.7 passer rating. Now, when we look at things, right, this was a game, a very winnable game that, once again, the Ravens do Ravens things and they shoot themselves in the foot. Every single time they shoot themselves in the foot. There is no reason why John Harbaugh should have challenged the call for Devontae Adams' sideline toe tap. There was no reason, because he was in. You can clearly see that he was in. So why in the world would you challenge that? Better yet, why would you call a timeout before the 2-minute warning? Why would you do that? You just wasted two critical timeouts that you would need if you was really going to try to march down the field real quick and either, kick a field goal or, try to score a touchdown to seal the game. And you didn't do that. Better yet, why in the world would you have Marlon go up against Brock Bowers? And you have a safety in Kyle Hamilton who would be a perfect dance partner for that matchup. Better yet, let me read you Brock Bowers' stats. Brock Bowers was 9 for 9, 98 yards, 10.9 receiving yards per reception. I'm going to read that again very slowly so you can hear exactly what I said. Brady, I'm going to say it a little bit closer in the mic so you can hear exactly what I just said. Brock Bowers was 9 for 9, 98 yards, 10.9 receiving yards per reception. If he would have had Kyle Hamilton on him, I guarantee you he would have not had that stat line, because Kyle Hamilton is big enough, strong enough, and rangy enough to where he can cover someone like a Brock Bowers. That's been their problem, basically since last season, is that they try to put a corner like Marlon on a tight end thinking that it's going to do something, and it's not. At this point, Marlon Humphrey needs to be put in the slot. He cannot play on the outside and try to do one-on-one matchups. He cannot do that at this point. That's why you drafted Nate Wiggins, so that Nate Wiggins can do that. You put Marlon in the slot because he is still physical enough to cover slot receivers, and then you have Kyle Hamilton to cover the tight ends. You do that, and you should have little to no problems. But to continue to play this very reserved, lackluster play calling is just absolutely deplorable. It is. It's just absolutely deplorable. Now, I will give the defense a little bit of leeway because the defensive coordinator, this is his first stint and whatnot. And so the defense is still trying to learn everything and whatnot. And I get that. It takes time. But come on, guys. Come on. What are we doing here? This is absolutely atrocious. It was a very atrocious game. It was a game that they could have easily won. And then you have the bad, quote unquote face mask. That was not a face mask. Even the people, because I was looking at the game, even the not the journalists, the commentators was like, no, that's not a face mask. They even zoomed in. He was nowhere near the face mask. Now what David Ajabo did, if that was called, that's definitely a penalty. That is a penalty 100% of the way. But to pull a flag out for Nnamdi Metabuke, no. That was uncalled for. They should have took that flag back, but it is what it is at this point. If I am the Ravens, I am playing like my life depends on it against the Cowboys. I am playing like someone has just lit a fire on top of my head. Because if you go 0-3, you are putting yourselves in a crater. You are putting yourself in a big hole, because you've already lost to 2 AFC teams, right? So that's gonna come back and haunt you once it gets time for seeding for the playoffs and whatnot. Cool. If you lose to the Cowboys, oh my God, you are never going to hear the end of that. You are never, ever going to hear the end of that. Okay? And I'll just leave it there because if I don't, there will be specific Ravens fans that will want to come and haunt me. So I'm just going to leave it there. Just, Steelers are undefeated, by the way. Just putting it out there. Now, moving on. Okay. Let's talk about the Chargers. Okay, so the Chargers right now have been on a hot streak, surprisingly. So far they've been doing their thing. They really have been doing their thing. So Justin Herbert, 14 completions out of 20 attempts, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 6.5 yards per attempt, 70% completion percentage, 23 times he dropped back. Now, I see what they're trying to do, which is they're not trying to have Justin Herbert throw the ball a lot, but when they do have him throw the ball, it is, they're getting down to the field, they're making plays and whatnot. And granted, it's working. It is working because there was a point in time where Quentin Johnston was definitely being labeled a bust. It was. And now he's having this resurgence in his career, and it's like, yo, that's what they've been waiting for. It's like that meme from SpongeBob. That's really what it is. J.K. Dobbins, he's having a resurgence in his career. This is probably the best J.K. Dobbins that we have seen probably since when he was at Ohio State. Okay? I'm going to give you the last 2 games. I'm going to give you the stats for the last 2 games. 17 attempts for 131 yards, 7.7 rushing yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and he had 4 rushes that were over 10 plus yards. Think about that for a second, folks. Now, here are the other stats for the other game. 10 attempts for 135 yards, 13.5 rushing yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. That is a very productive running back. And, it also helps that they drafted Joe Alt with their first pick. You have Joe Alt on one side and you have Rashawn Slater on the other side. That's a really good tackle duo, okay? That is a really, really, really productive tackle duo. And, granted, they definitely caught a lot of flack when they were, when they let go of Mike Williams and they traded away Keenan Allen. But so far, it's looked pretty successful. Rely on the defense, very physical defense. You still have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and Derwin James. And, a really good run game in J.K. Dobbins. And then, the quarterback do quarterback things. And that is somewhat of the cycle that we are starting to see in the league now, is that, guess what? Teams are starting to go back to relying on the run game more. They are starting to favor, having a very physical defense, low scoring games, keep things close, win the game. That's sort of the mantra. That's sort of the cycle that we are going back into. And so, that's why you're seeing, players like a J.K. Dobbins have these type of games. That's why. That's really why. And that sort of entails to another team that sort of has that same, mantra as well with the Steelers. Yes, I have to talk about the Steelers. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because, no, just not going to do it. So the Justin Fields experiment continues. Yes, it definitely continues. Now, when we look at things, it is a situation where well, not him, but the team actually gets a real life, in real time look at him and how he plays in games. Not preseason games, not games where, the starters are not in and that person is in. We're talking about real games that have real effects on if you go to the playoffs, the Super Bowl, all those different types of things. And so far, he's been playing well. And basically, the model that the Steelers are having is play non-mistake football. Don't turn the ball over. Rely on the defense. Have a productive run game. Rely on the tight ends and George Pickens. Win the game. And it's worked. That's why they are undefeated. But at the same time, if we are being real here, at some point, the offense is going to have to do more. It's going to have to do more. Now, granted, they did beat the Broncos, But I mean, 13 points is not enough. It's not. You have to put up at least 20 some points in order to be in a really good position. Because if you don't, teams can easily come back and beat you. And, Justin Fields has looked pretty. He's looked okay. I'm not saying he's looked great. Not going to say he's looked amazing. Not going to say he looks like he could be the starter, moving forward in the future and whatnot. Not saying any of those different types of things. All I'm saying is Justin Fields, I feel like we should want more out of Justin Fields because we know the potential that he has, right? And, they have to be they have to do better with the play calling and whatnot because that second half of that Broncos game was absolutely atrocious. It was. On the offensive side, it was atrocious. And if the Broncos had a few good plays and they were putting some points on the board, they could have easily came back and won that game. I'm just being completely honest here. And they have to start feeding George Pickens the ball. George Pickens is their best option at receiver since, they failed in getting Brandon Ayuk and other receivers. But we're not going to talk about that, okay? We're just not going to talk about that. But when we look at things, they have to do better. Now, as usual, I do like to look at the Tomlin Tuesday podcast because there's a lot of insightful things that he be saying on those Tuesdays. And basically he's saying for the time now, Justin Fields will be, the starting quarterback until Russ can, properly participate in practice and whatnot. So, which I completely agree on. But at some point, I think it does have to start to make you wonder, like, okay, the longer that this draws out, does this mean that, okay, once Russ is healthy, that's when they're probably going to put him in? Or, what exactly is going on with Russ in his calf strain? They've been very, button lip about it, and, it shows. Now, the only thing I think that really had me on, not really on pins and needles, but had me confused was them continuing to rotate between Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu. Now, Troy Fautanu, coming out of Washington was a more refined tackle than Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones was raw. He was a very raw prospect, and they knew that it was going to take him some time before, he gets to the place where they feel comfortable with him. But I think at this point, I think you have to consider sitting him down because, for one, you can tell that he is injured. You can tell it. And it's not an injury that you can, play through. Originally he messed up his elbow, he just had the brace. But now it's looking like they're putting more and more stuff on that elbow area, and it looks like it's limiting him from being able to not only hold up his blocks but to punch. And you can't do anything if your elbow is messed up. You just can't. So at some point, I think it would be best if they was to rest him a little bit and maybe see exactly what's going on compared to trying to, try to see exactly what's going on at this point. Troy Fautanu looked good. He did. But you continuing to, okay, Troy is out, Broderick is in. Broderick is in, Troy is out. No, you save that for practice. That's when you do those type of things. You don't do those type of things during the game. You just don't. But if Justin Fields continues to win games and if he actually gets better, like he has a better stat line and the offense is starting to be productive, I would not be surprised if they make a decision and they have Justin Fields be the remaining starting quarterback for the rest of the season. I just would not be surprised. So this is still, the drama still continues for quarterbacks with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who knows what will happen? Twists and turns, all those different types of things. Now, on to the Eagles and Falcons game. Yes, it was a very good Monday night football game. It was a game that had a lot of twists and turns. But Kirko. Kirko being Kirko. That's just the best way to put it. Kirko being Kirko. Kirko came back and he put on a show, okay? Kirk Cousins was 20 completions out of 29 attempts, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, one 117.2 passer rating, 8.3 yards per attempt, a 69% completion percentage, okay? Not to mention, Kirk Cousins was 5 out of 6 during that 70-yard touchdown drive to seal the game, okay? Jalen Hurts was 23 completions out of 30 attempts, 183 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, a 88.6 passer rating, 6.1 yards per attempt, 76.7 completion percentage. Now, when we look at this, the Eagles were definitely starting to really, march down the field when they started to rely on Saquon Barkley, and things were starting to look good. And then out of the blue, they just, I don't know, for whatever reason, they just stopped. And once they stopped, they messed up. Now, I will say this: that defense does not look good. That defense has a lot of growing pains that they still have to go through, and it's probably going to take them some time, like it does for any other team. But I still have high hopes for them. I'm not sleeping on them because they have enough firepower on that defense where they can make some moves. And granted, for the offensive side, back to the offense, the Eagles didn't have A.J. Brown, so they tried to, do the best that they can do, which at first they were doing it. They were, but then they decided to make, well, not they, but Nick Sirianni started to make stupid, decision making and always trying to go for it on fourth down. If you're the first time they went for, I think it was like they were near the red zone and whatnot, you should have just kicked the field goal. You should have just kicked the field goal, and you would have had some points on the board compared to trying to go for it every single time on fourth down. This isn't Madden. This isn't a situation where you can try to do something crazy and then get the first down. Like, no, just kick the field goal, play reserved, and just keep it pushing. That's just what you do at this point. And it's, I don't know. It when we look at this, the Falcons got their money last night with Kirk Cousins. They got their money, okay? Kirk Cousins was doing Kirk Cousins things when they needed him to do it. And so far, he looked a whole lot better, a little bit more comfortable in this game than what he did in the game against the Steelers. But, time will only tell with everything moving forward. Now, this is what I will say. Giants, you messed up. You messed up horribly. Because, again, the owner said I would lose some sleep if we lost Saquon Barkley. And you see exactly what has happened so far with them losing Saquon Barkley. I want you to look at the stats for Saquon Barkley and then look up the stats for Devin Singletary that now plays for the Giants. Compare those two and then come back to me. Better yet, leave that in a comment down below on Instagram at football_junkiespod. Yeah, let's just do that. Now, on to the final game to talk about. Yes. The final game. Yes, the Cowboys. The Cowboys doing Cowboys things, okay? Cowboys doing Cowboys things. Cowboys got decimated, okay? They got cooked. They got grilled. They got pan-seared. They got reverse pan-seared. They put the thyme and the garlic and the butter in the pan, and they started basting it real good, making sure that it was that golden brown color. Let it sit, let it rest for a little bit, and then served it. Served that hot, fresh L. Okay, they got served with a hot, fresh L by the Saints, okay? Dak Prescott, yes, it doesn't, all of it doesn't fall on Dak's shoulders, but I mean, Lord, this is, that Saints offense was cooking. They went in there with intentions of violence, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fellow junkies, okay? Dak Prescott's stats are as follows. 27 completions out of 39 attempts, 293 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, a 78.3 passer rating, 7.5 yards per attempt, 69.2 completion percentage. Now, he was pressured 11 times and he was sacked 3 times. Okay, cool. Now, when we look at Derek Carr, 11 completions out of 16 attempts, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, a 125 passer rating, 15.2 yards per attempt. I'm going to say that again. 15.2 yards per attempt and a 68.8 completion percentage. Now, here's a little fun fact for you. Here's a little nugget. Okay, a little junky nugget. Do you know that actually might be a new thing now? See, greatest football podcast in the world. Come on now. Carr used play action on 9 out of 17 dropbacks. Okay, at 59%, the highest rate in 9 seasons. In 9 seasons. And mind you, their offensive coordinator is Clint Kubiak, again, who comes from the 49ers tree. Just saying. Alvin Kamara, 20 attempts for 115 yards, 5.8 rushing yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, and he had 4 rushes of 10 plus yards. Now, when we look at this, the Cowboys, where they just couldn't stop it. They could not stop Alvin Kamara. There was nothing that they could do to neutralize him. They wasn't able to really make a comeback. It was just the Saints were just doing their thing. It was one of those games. And, granted, I understand that, the Cowboys, they got a new defensive coordinator and all those different types of things. But Lord have mercy, this is absolutely deplorable. This is not good. And, the Cowboys have to have a rebound game. Especially defensively, they have to have a better game. They just have to, because if not, they will be the rotating door not only in their division but for other teams that have to go up against them. Okay, I get it. It's overreaction. It's only the second week of the season. Everyone's still having their growing pains of learning and all those different types of things. But good God Almighty, this was a horrible game. This was a horrible game. But I'm going to end it here. I told myself I was going to keep things light, and clearly I didn't, because we're almost at an hour again. But, I do this because I love you guys oh so much. So if you guys like what you guys are listening, please leave a 5-star review on anywhere that you guys can listen and get your daily fix of the greatest football podcast you could possibly think of. That is the Football Junkies podcast. Okay, now follow us on YouTube, Football Junkies Pod. Okay, Football Junkies Pod. Instagram, Football_Junkies Pod. Junkies Pod is not what? It is together, not spaced. Okay, same thing for TikTok, Football_Junkies Pod. Again, Football_Junkies Pod. Now, when you go on the Instagram, the Instagram and the YouTube, there is a link tree. You click on that link tree. That link tree will take you to any of the other places that we have available, whether that be our social media or other places you guys can listen to the Football Junkies podcast. You can also listen to this great podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else that you listen to podcasts on. Okay, now as always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. Stay tuned. There might be more episodes coming out this week. I'm thinking about maybe doing a preview for Thursday's night game. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Pretty soon, we're going to be hitting 40 episodes. Pretty soon. But as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Peace and love. I'm out.